"I haven't had sex in 6 months," the giant Zulu sister said to the lumberjack. Snow took the sound out of the world that night. Even the pines seemed to be listening. The lumberjack sat on the rough bench outside the bunkhouse, shoulders hunched, coat unbuttoned at the throat. His breath rose in slow, weary clouds, then vanished into the dark. The camp lantern, hanging from a bent nail on the post, swayed on its own, pushed by some cautious wind that never reached his face. He had worked 12 hours on the line. His palms ached in that familiar, bone-deep way. Sap clung beneath his nails. The smell of fresh-cut spruce still lived in his beard. The day should have emptied him. It usually did, but tonight his chest felt crowded. Boot steps pressed through the snow behind him. He didn't turn. The crutch told him who it was already. Hers were heavier than most of the camp's men. Slow, certain, unforgiving. "You sit out here like a grave marker," she said. Her voice carried a low, unhurried music. It was not the song of this country, but it had sunk into it like a foreign seed surviving in frozen soil. He looked up. She stood in the doorway's frame, broad shoulders nearly filling it, shawl dark against the dim light behind her. The camp cookhouse glowed behind her back, the weak orange breathing around her shape. Snow ringed the hem of her long skirt, wet and clinging. Her arms were bare to the elbow, skin shining with the last of kitchen heat and dishwater. She had been scouring pots again. They were large pots, but they looked small in her hands. "You should be in by the stove," he said. "Floor's cold out here." Her mouth pulled to one side, almost amused. "Floor's cold in there, too," she answered. Just louder. He watched the slow white twisting from his mouth, then from hers. Her breath rose steadier than his. He noticed a slight tremble in her fingers as she folded her arms. The camp took everyone's warmth, even the strong. "You done for the night?" he asked. She stepped down from the threshold. The old plank groaned under her weight. Snow whispered beneath her boots as she crossed to him, stopping just close enough that he had to tilt his head back to meet her eyes. "I am never done," she said. But they stopped shouting eventually. The lantern swung again, casting her face in slices of light and shade. High cheekbones, jaw tight, eyes fixed on some point just behind him. Her hair was wrapped in a knot at the back of her head, scarf tied firm. Stray curls had broken loose, damp from the steam of the kitchen, clinging to her temples where the cold now claimed them. He moved his gloves aside, patting the bench. "Sit," he said. "World's still turning. Might as well watch it spin." She considered him, then the bench, then the dark line of the tree line beyond the camp. Somewhere out there, a tree cracked in the frost with a gunshot sound. She flinched slightly, almost invisible, then pretended she hadn't. She sat. The bench dipped lower on her side. Shoulder to shoulder, they touched along the heavy wool of his coat and the rough cotton of her sweater. The contact felt like something forgotten being remembered. For a while, they said nothing. The snow fell in a quiet that seemed almost careful around them. Smoke from the cookhouse chimney curled in a thin gray ribbon against the sky, where no stars showed. The camp dogs lay in hollows they'd scratched in the snow, noses tucked under tails, black shapes half visible beyond the lantern's reach. "You had trouble in the mess again," he said eventually. It wasn't a question. He had heard the voices earlier. Men complaining, chairs scraping, one fork slammed too hard on the table. Then her voice sharp, commanding in a language most of them did not understand, followed by silence. She shrugged one massive shoulder. They were drunk enough to be brave, but not enough to be stupid. What did they say? Something flickered behind her eyes. She rubbed her hands together, slowly, as if still washing something off her skin. "One of them thought he was funny," she said. I told him he was not. What did he say? He repeated. She looked at him then, straight and steady. Ignore them, he added before she could speak. Camp's full of men who think their tongues are sharper than their axes. She gave a humorless little laugh. His tongue will heal, she said. I hit only his pride. He almost smiled. You hit him? With words, she replied. Tonight. Tonight, he echoed. She turned her face back to the dark line of forest. Her jaw worked for a moment, as though chewing on something she did not want. Then she spoke, her voice quieter now, but no less certain. I told him, she said, that if he wanted to use his mouth, he should learn to use it for something useful. Her lips curled, then flattened again. He said many things I will not repeat. Then he asked why I was so angry, why I looked at them like they were children. She paused. The lantern hummed softly on its hook. And what did you say? The lumberjack asked. She drew in a breath that frosted immediately at her lips. I said, she murmured, I haven't had sex in 6 months. The words dropped between them like an axe head. He blinked. He had heard her say sharp things before. He had heard her curse in her own language, and in rough English picked up from men who didn't deserve to teach it. But he hadn't heard her speak like that. He didn't look at her, but he felt the heat rise under his collar. The night seemed colder around the edges of her sentence. He cleared his throat. That shut them up, he said. It made them louder, she answered. You know them. Everything becomes a joke before it becomes a truth. A dog snorted in its sleep. A log shifted in the bunkhouse stove, and the sound leaked through the wall behind them. A tired sigh of heat. I shouldn't have said it, she added. Softer now. He let the silence sit for a moment before replying. His fingers found a splinter on the bench and worried at it. Maybe you should, he said. Truth's heavy. Sometimes you have to throw some of it off, or it breaks your back. She looked at him again. There was something measuring in her gaze, as if she were weighing his answers like flour. You. Do not ask me why, she said. It's not my business, he replied. Everything is everyone's business in this place, she countered. He exhaled slowly. The cold pinched his lungs. You're a grown woman, he said. What you need or don't is your own affair. She studied the darkness ahead. Need, she repeated. The word seemed to taste strange in her mouth. Do you think that is all it is? A need? He shifted on the bench. His shoulders rolled under his coat. I think, he said carefully, that men talk about it like hunger, like meat or bread, something to fill an emptiness. But I've seen enough to know it's more than that, and less, sometimes. She listened, eyes narrowed slightly, like someone watching a tree line for movement. He continued, voice low. Out there, he nodded toward the rows of stumps and black trucks. You misjudge a tree, you pay for it. It falls strange, crushes a man, breaks his leg, takes his hand. Same with people. You take too much or take it carelessly, and something's lost that doesn't grow back. She was quiet for a long time. Something tightened in her throat. He could hear it when she finally spoke. Where I come from, she said. They spoke of it with words that mean swelling rivers, growing fields, cow's fat with milk. Not hunger, not devouring. Filling, yes. Devouring, no. Her accent deepened as she talked, consonants thickening, vowels lengthening. The camp English slid away from her tongue, and something older moved in. And now? He asked gently. Now it is another thing taken, she said. Taken by ships, taken by men with paper, taken by men with guns, taken by this cold that makes my body forget it is alive. He said nothing. Her hands opened and closed on her knees. Big hands, scarred at the knuckles, skin roughened by hot water, knives, heavy pots. Hands that had once, she had told him, helped pull water from deep, sweet wells under hot skies. When I said those words in there, she went on, they thought I was inviting. They laughed like boys behind a fence. She shook her head. But I was just counting out loud, like someone counts the days of mourning. He understood something then, or thought he did. Not the whole of it. He knew enough to know he could never know the whole of it, but enough to see the edge. 6 months is a long time up here, he said. Winter makes weeks feel like years. 6 months, she corrected, since anything touched me and meant it. The lantern swung again. Her face moved through the light, strong, tired, hurting, proud. Snowflakes clung to her eyelashes and did not melt. He swallowed. The words he might have said rose and fell like logs in a river, catching on each other, refusing to find a clear line. You have the women in town, she said suddenly. When the river thaws, when the money lies thick in your pockets. Men talk of them. They make jokes, but their eyes are not joking. She turned toward him. You go to them? He watched his breath leave him. It looked thin. I used to, he said. Years back. Why not now? He thought of the last time. The sour smell of spilled beer. The tightness in his chest that had nothing to do with the woman's hands on his shirt. The way her eyes had drifted past him to the door, counting the steps of the next man. Felt like paying someone to pretend I wasn't alone, he said. I can do that on my own for free. She looked at him for a long moment, then laughed once, a short, rough sound. You are strange, she said, so I've been told. The cold gnawed at their knees. Somewhere a man coughed in his sleep. Another cursed softly in a dream. She shifted on the bench, turning more toward him. Their shoulders pressed firmer, the shared warmth small but real. In my village, she said, we built houses so close we could hear each other breathe at night. You could smell what your neighbor's wife was cooking before your own pot boiled. There was no alone. Not like here. He glanced at her. Do you miss it? She smiled without showing teeth. Missing as a luxury? I remember it. That is enough most days. Most days. Her words sat between them, heavy as a log on a sled. The lumberjack looked at her hands again, the way they lay now, palms down, steady. He thought of his own hands, the lives they had touched, a mother's face once, a brother's shoulder, a few women whose names he remembered but whose voices were fading. He cleared his throat. For what it's worth, he said, I don't think you should be ashamed of saying what you said. Hunger's not shameful. Wanting to be touched, he forced the word out, not shameful either. Men make it ugly sometimes. That doesn't mean it starts ugly? She watched him, eyes dark, unreadable. You speak like a pastor, she said quietly. One who has sinned often enough to sound tired of it. He huffed out a breath that might have been a laugh. My father wanted me to be a pastor, he replied. Said I had the voice for it. I liked trees better than people. And now? She asked. Now I spend my days killing the trees I liked, he said, and my nights trying not to think too hard about the rest. They fell silent again. The cold climbed their legs like water. He could no longer feel his toes. Still, he did not suggest going inside. The bunkhouse was full of men and breath and dreams that smelled like unwashed blankets. Here there was space and sky, and one person whose eyes did not look through him. Back home, she said at last, almost musing, I would be married. Children at my feet. I would not know this kind of silence. My sisters, they had men who were clumsy, foolish, kind, cruel. All the shapes. They shouted, they laughed, they argued loudly enough for the goats to complain. But there was a place for the body there, not hidden, not something you whisper after drink. Her voice roughened. Then the soldiers came, the missionaries, the farmers who wanted the land to belong to paper instead of bones. She gestured at the snow. And now I am here, feeding men who do not know my name unless they are angry, carrying this body like a secret in my own skin. He could feel the words landing inside him, heavy and real. He turned his head, just enough so he could see the line of her jaw. "What do you want?" he asked softly. "Not in some perfect world that won't come, here, in this one. In this frozen camp, with men who shout and trees that fall wrong." She blew out a breath. It ghosted between them, warm for an instant. "I want," she said, "to feel like my body still belongs to me. That when I am touched, it is because I chose it. I want to remember that I am not only hands that scrub and lift, and a back that bends, and a mouth that serves food, and sharp words. I want to feel the weight of someone's hand and not flinch because I am remembering a soldier's grip." The sentence hung there, raw. He swallowed. His hands lay open in his lap now, scarred palms up, as if an offering to the night. He did not tell her she was beautiful. The word felt small, cheap, wrong in his mouth. He did not tell her she deserved better. She already knew that. Everyone did in their own way, out here at the edge of the world. He only said very quietly, no one should have to remember their body by the ways it was taken from them. She inhaled sharply. Her eyes closed for a heartbeat, then opened again, steady. "That," she said, "is closer to what I meant than anything I told those fools inside." The lantern crackled. Its fuel was running low. The corner of the camp fell a bit darker, the cold pressing in, testing the seams of their coats, the space between their shoulders. Without thinking, he shifted just enough that his arm brushed hers more fully. A small movement, an inch, maybe two, but deliberate. She did not move away. Her warmth bled through the layers of cloth. It was faint, but it was there. A proof of life in a world that liked to pretend everyone was made of ice and bark. He heard the small catch in her breath. Not surprise, not fear, just recognition. A note changing in a song. The dogs stirred again, one letting out a low, questioning whine. Somewhere a door opened and shut. Boots scuffed across packed snow. A man laughed, too loudly, too alone. The sounds faded toward the latrine, then disappeared. They were alone again. "What is your name?" she asked suddenly. He blinked. "You know my name." "I know what they call you," she said. "Red, or the Swede when they forget you're not." He almost smiled. The beard did it. The hair that had once been bright and now held sawdust and early gray. The broad shoulders and quiet manner. Men liked names they could throw like stones. "Jonas," he said. "My name is Jonas." She tasted it under her breath. Jonas. He liked the way his name sounded in her mouth. Softer, longer, changed by a different tongue. "And yours?" he asked, though he knew. He had heard the cook shout it, the foreman bark it, the men twisted into shapes that did not fit. "Namusa," she replied. Then, because she had learned that repeating things made men listen better here, no dash mu dash say. "It means grace." He nodded slowly. "Namusa," he said, trying to mirror the shape of it. His mouth felt clumsy around the vowels. She tilted her head. "Better than most," she admitted. They fell into another silence, but it felt different now. Less like a wall, more like a path that had not yet been walked. "You came here alone?" he asked. She shook her head. "With my sisters?" "Not my blood sisters. The ones who survived the same road." The same ship. Her eyes darkened. The company wanted hands that did not complain as loudly as the men. They wanted cheap hands. They thought women would be softer. And, he asked, and they learned we are not, she answered. Only quieter. Until we are not. He nodded once. Where are they now? He ventured. Scattered, she said. One married to a man who promises to take her south when he has enough money. One sent further inland to a camp with worse pay. One buried in a ground too hard to dig, so the men had to burn her. Her jaw clenched. They said it was merciful. The earth was stone that week. He looked out over the snow. It lay smooth and deep, hiding everything beneath it. I'm sorry, he said. She gave a little shrug that did not reach her eyes. It is what happened, she replied. Sorry is a word that does not change soil or bone. The lantern sputtered again. It would go out soon. He thought of suggesting they move inside, but the thought of stepping into that airless heat, full of snores and stale breath, made his chest tighten. How long will you stay? She asked after a moment. In this camp, in these trees. He rolled the question around in his mind. As long as my back holds, he said. As long as my hands can still close around an axe. As long as the foreman keeps my name on the list and not on the cross by the trail. She studied him, eyes flicking from his face to his hands and back. And after? She pressed. After, he repeated quietly. The word felt too big. I don't know. There's a brother somewhere south with a small farm and a temper. He wrote once years back. Said I could come. Help with the plow. Hear children screaming instead of trees snapping. He scratched his beard. I never answered. Why? She asked. Because if I went, he said slowly, I would have to explain why I stayed away so long. And I don't have words for that. Not ones that sound good out loud. She nodded. Sometimes silence is easier to carry than truth. She seemed to be speaking of herself as much as him. The wind shifted. A thin finger of cold slid down the back of his neck. He shivered. You should go inside, he said. Your arms are bare. She glanced at them as if only now remembering the skin. Goosebumps had risen along the dark flesh, the small hairs standing at attention. I've stood over hot fires all evening, she replied. The cold is a relief. He chuckled softly. Never thought I'd hear that. She turned, inspecting his face. You too, she said. You look like a man who wants to fold into himself and sleep right here on this bench. Wouldn't be the first time, he admitted. Her gaze slid toward the bunkhouse door. Then to the cookhouse. Then the dark shape of the storage shed. He could almost see her mind turning, measuring spaces, calculating where voices might reach and where they might not. Come, she said suddenly, rising. The bench creaked in protest as her weight left it. The sudden loss of warmth at his side made the night feel sharper. Where? He asked, standing more slowly. She jerked her chin toward the back of the cookhouse. There is a corner where the wind forgets to bite, she said, and the wall holds heat from the stove longer than it should. I go there sometimes when the shouting in my head is louder than the shouting in the hall. He hesitated, not because he feared her, not because he feared himself, because he knew what tongues would do with the sight of a man and a woman slipping into shadows together. As if reading him, she added, no one goes there at this hour. They think the cookhouse sleeps when they do. He watched her for a heartbeat, the set of her shoulders, the tired curve of her back, the way she did not reach for him, did not pull, did not coax. She simply offered a path out of the cold. All right, he said. They walked side by side, boots crunching softly. The lantern's circle of light stayed behind with the empty bench. Ahead was only the dim glow seeping from the cookhouse windows and the vague shapes of piled wood and barrels. Behind the cookhouse he felt the difference at once. The wind dropped away, blocked by the building's bulk. Heat leaked through the rough boards, a faint exhale against his spine as he leaned back. She settled a pace away at first, then closer, shoulder near shoulder again, but not touching. Their faces turned toward the dark trees, as if they were two sentries and not two people hiding from their own thoughts. "Better," she murmured. He nodded. The smell here was different. Smoke and old stew, onions and grease baked into the wood, and underneath it all, the cleaner note of cold iron and fresh snow. It was almost comforting. "How old are you?" she asked. He snorted softly. "Rude question." "I have washed enough old men's plates in there," she said, jerking her head toward the cookhouse wall, "to know the difference between tired and finished." "You are tired." "Not finished." 33, he said. She nodded, satisfied. "I am 28, she said. "The men think I am older because I look at them like a mother looks at stupid boys." "Maybe they need that," he said. "They need to grow," she replied. "They want to stay boys forever. It is easier to sing about their foolishness than to change it." His breath fogged the air. "You're not wrong." Another quiet settled over them. It was less stiff now, more like a blanket pulled up slowly. "No Musa," he said, testing the name again. "Do you regret telling them what you did?" She was quiet before answering. "I regret telling it to them," she said at last, "but not saying it. It needed to leave my mouth. I just wish it had landed on ears that understood." He glanced at her. "You think I understand?" he asked. "You understand enough to not laugh," she said. "That is a start." He smiled faintly. "Low bar. Here?" she said. "Very high." The door on the far side of the cookhouse opened briefly. A wash of light swept the snow, spilling across barrels and stacked firewood. A man's silhouette moved, then vanished as the door closed. They remained in shadow. No one glanced their way. Jonas became aware of his hands again. They hung at his sides empty. He could feel the urge to move them, to do something with them. Years of work had taught his body that stillness was dangerous. Idle hands made the mind wander to places it shouldn't go. "May I ask you something?" he said. She nodded without turning. "When you say 6 months," he asked carefully, "do you mean from choice? Or because there was no one you trusted?" The word snagged in his throat. Trust. It didn't come easily here. Not with pay held back and promises broken under snow. She drew in a slow breath. "There was a man," she said, "before the ship, before the road. We were going to marry when the rains came back." Her eyes softened at the memory. "He had hands like small trees, strong, with roots. He listened more than he spoke. He brought my mother food even when there was none for himself." "What happened?" Jonas asked gently. "The soldiers took him," she said simply. "They said they needed men to carry their guns and dig their holes. He did not come back. No one did." His chest tightened. There was nothing to say to that. "After that," she continued, "there were others. Not men I chose. Men who fell asleep drunk in the wrong place. Men I traded something to because my sisters were hungry. Men who thought giving their bodies for a night made them generous." Her voice roughened. "I let them take what they wanted because there was no room to say no and still keep everyone alive." He swallowed. A sour taste rose in his mouth. "So when I say 6 months," she finished quietly, "I mean 6 months without taking that bargain. Without waking up and feeling like my skin is a coat someone else wore." The wind found them again in that moment, sneaking around the corner as if it had been listening. It lifted the edge of her scarf, tugged at his beard, made the boards creak under their shoulders. He spoke carefully. "You know," he said, "if you never wanted anyone again, no man, no woman, no touch at all, that would be your right. More than your right. It'd be understandable." Her jaw clenched. "But I do," she said, frustration sharpening her tone. "That is the weight. I am not a stone. My body still remembers. It can feel good, warm, wanted, without shame. Sometimes I wake from dreams and I am angry at myself for what my own mind did while I slept." She exhaled hard, breath fogging out. "I'm sorry," he said again. Knowing the word was small, but having nothing better, she shook her head. "Do not be sorry for what I said. Be sorry for the world that made it a confession." They leaned there for a long time, backs warmed by the cookhouse wall, faces stung by the night. The camp settled into itself. Far off, a wolf howled once, then fell silent. The trees did not answer. "You ever think of leaving?" he asked after a while. "Going south, west, anywhere but here. Where would I go?" She asked. "The men who brought us here still own the road out. They own the papers. If I walk into a town without their blessing, I am a thief, a stranger, a woman with skin they think is wrong. They will ask who owns me. When I say no one, they will decide that is not true." The bitterness in her voice was a low flame. "You're not owned," he said. "In here," she tapped her chest. "I know that." "Out there?" She gestured toward the invisible towns. "They see a story they wrote themselves, and they like its ending better than mine." He looked at her then, with something like anger waking in his face. Not at her, at the shape of things. "You saved Oscar's hand," he said suddenly. She blinked, thrown by the change. "I what?" "When he cut it with the draw knife last month," Jonas said. "He was bleeding like a stuck pig. Men were panicking. You came with that boiled cloth and something that stank like death, wrapped it tight, kept him from losing the fingers. Foreman said the company doctor would have done the same if he'd bothered to ride out." He shook his head. "But he didn't. You did." She shrugged. "Where I come from, you do not wait for men with paper to fix what is bleeding." "My point is," he said, leaning forward slightly, "you're not just a pair of hands that wash dishes. You're half the reason this camp still stands." She gave him a long, searching look. "You say that like you believe it." "I do," he said simply. Something in her eased. Just a fraction. Enough that her shoulders lowered, the tightness in her neck loosening. "You're the only one who has said it," she admitted. "The others thank me when the food is hot. They curse when it is not. They see the work, not the person doing it." He rolled his jaw, thinking. "They're fools, then?" "Yes," she said. "But fools still decide who is paid at the end of the month." He thought of the ledger in the foreman's hands. The heavy pencil, the blot of ink. How easily a name could be skipped. "Jonas," she said. "Yes." "When I told those men in there about 6 months," she said slowly, weighing each word, "I was not asking them for anything." "I was," she trailed off, seeking the right phrase. "Trying to remind myself I still exist, that I am not only elbows and footsteps and steam." He nodded. "I understand, do you?" she challenged softly. He considered the night sky. It was a blank, low ceiling. "My father drank himself into a hole," he said finally. "After my mother died, he kept working, kept showing up to the line. But when he came home, he was like an empty house. You'd knock and knock, but no one opened the door." He swallowed. "I left because I was afraid I would become that. A man moving, eating, sleeping, whose inside was gone. Sometimes when the days blur and the trees all fall the same, I wonder if it happened anyway." She listened without interrupting. "So," he continued, "maybe I don't know all of what you meant. I can't, but I know what it is to look in a mirror and not be sure there's someone behind your own eyes." She turned her head just enough to see his profile. The strong nose, the line of his brow, the wear in the corners of his mouth. "You are there," she said with simple certainty. "I would not be out here in this cold if you were not." Her honesty hit him like a hand on the chest. He feared suddenly that if he moved, the moment would shatter, that if he said the wrong thing, the fragile line between them would snap. So he did the smallest, truest thing he could. He lifted one hand, slowly, as if approaching a skittish animal. He gave her enough time to move away, to refuse, to turn his gesture into the foolishness of a tired man. She did not move. His fingertips brushed the back of her hand. Her skin was warmer than his, even in the cold. Rough from work, but alive. He let his hand settle there, barely touching, resting like a leaf on thick bark. Her fingers spread slightly. Not an invitation. Not yet. Just an acknowledgment that she felt it. They stayed like that. Two people behind a cookhouse, leaning against a wall that still held the day's heat, sharing the barest contact at the edge of their hands, while the northern night watched in silence. The contact was so small that the night almost missed it. Almost. The muse's hand stayed still at first. Then he felt it, the faintest shift of muscle and tendon under his fingertips. Not a flinch. Not a retreat. More like her body taking stock of the moment, deciding whether this, too, was something being taken from her, or something she could claim. Her thumb moved just enough to brush the side of his finger. He realized he had been holding his breath. He let it out in a slow, quiet stream that turned white in the chill air. The heat from the cookhouse wall pressed against his back. Her warmth pressed softly against his hand. Between those two, the cold could only circle and wait. "You are shaking," she said quietly. He glanced down at their hands, then at his own arm. It was true. A small, almost invisible tremor ran along his wrist. "It's cold," he said. "It is not the cold," she replied. He considered lying, but he was tired of that kind of thing. Tired of pretending his bones did not ache, and his heart did not want. "I'm nervous," he admitted. She turned her face toward him, just enough that the faint glow from the window sketched her cheek. "Of me? No," he said quickly. "Not of you, of getting this wrong." Something eased in her jaw. Her gaze returned to the darkness ahead. "Then do not rush," she said. "Rushing is how men make mistakes with axes. And with people." He heard himself chuckle. "You're not wrong." Their hands remained a quiet question between them. She shifted her fingers, turning her palm up under his. The movement was deliberate, unhurried. She set her hand in his like someone laying down a tool after deciding to trust it. Her palm was broad, strong, calloused at the base of the fingers. He felt the scar that ran along the heel of it, a raised line from some cut, long healed. "How did you get this?" he asked, brushing it with his thumb. "Pot broke," she said. "Boiling water. I caught it before it fell on a girl's feet." "The scar looks old," he observed. "It is," she answered. "Different village. Different fire. Same work." He ran his thumb along it again, gently, as if apologizing on behalf of all the fires that had ever burned her. "You have many scars," she noted. "Your hands look like the map of a river." He smiled faintly. "Most of them came from being stupid," he said. This one, he traced a white line across his knuckles, was from missing a knot. This, he touched the rough patch on the base of his thumb, from a handle that broke. This little one here, near the wrist, He paused. Came from a man's teeth, if you can believe it. She turned his hand to see better. He bit you? He was drunk, Jonas said. Fell from a logjam into the river. I hauled him up. He thought I was dragging him under. Latched on like a dog until I hit him. Did he live? She asked. He did, he said. Stayed angry about it, too? Swore I tried to drown him. Men like that, she said, always shout loudest about the people who save them. They shared a small silence that felt almost like an agreement. The wind shifted again, carrying faint sounds from the bunkhouse. A snore, someone mumbling a half-remembered song. The scrape of a bed frame as a man rolled over. Do you think about them? She asked suddenly. Who? The women in town, she said. The ones you used to pay. Do you think about them when you sleep? He considered the shapes of old memories. The smells, the sounds, the faces blurred by drink and smoke and time. Sometimes, he said. But not like you think? How then? She pressed. Like people I passed on the road in the dark, he said finally. I remember that they were there, that they had eyes and hands and voices. But when I try to hold on to their faces, they slide away. He shrugged slightly. It feels unfair to them and to me to have shared something that close and remember it like fog. Namisa was quiet for a moment. Do you think about the man you are going to marry? He asked, voice low. Yes, she said simply. Even if I did not want to, the old women in my mind would make me. They sit there and say, remember him. Remember his hands. Remember his laugh. If you forget, the soldiers win twice. He thought of old women he had known in his own village. Faces lined like dried apples, tongues sharp enough to cut rope. He could almost see them sitting in a circle in her thoughts, refusing to let her put down what hurt. Do you still love him? Jonas asked. She considered this seriously, as if weighing grain. I love the shape of what might have been, she said. The small house, the shared blanket, the children who would curse us and then bring us water. I do not know if I still love him. He has been gone so long. Maybe he married someone else in another world. Maybe he died the first week. She shook her head. Love is hard when you do not know whether to mourn or to be angry. He nodded. He understood that. Waiting on news that never came could rot the heart. And you? She asked. Have you loved anyone? He thought for a long time. There was a girl, he said, almost tasting the sawdust of years. Before I left home. We were going to marry too, once I had enough to buy a small plot. But the winter was hard. Her father grew sick. The doctor bills came. A merchant from the town helped them. Later she married him. Namusa's brow furrowed. So he bought her? Some would say that, Jonas said. Others would say he saved her family, and this was gratitude. I don't know. I just know one day she stopped coming to the fence to talk, and the next I saw her riding in his wagon. Were you angry? She asked. I tried to be, he said. It's easier being angry, cleaner, but mostly I was tired. Tired of losing fights I never really entered. He realized then that his thumb had begun to trace small, slow circles on the back of her hand. He froze, half expecting her to pull away. She did not. Instead, she said, So we are two people who almost had lives and now live in their shadows. He huffed a breath that might have been a laugh. That sounds about right. She squeezed his hand lightly. Maybe the shadow can still be warm, she said. He turned his head to look at her. Her eyes were dark pools, catching what little light there was. Namusa, he said, yes. I don't want to be another man who takes something from you because the night is cold and we're both lonely, he said. The words came out rough but true. I've seen enough of that up here. Men using each other to forget the emptiness for an hour, then turning away in the morning like nothing happened. She held his gaze. There was no softness in her now, only seriousness. "Do you think I do not know the difference?" she asked quietly. "Between being taken and choosing? Between hunger and use?" "I think you do," he said quickly. I don't trust myself to always know it. Not after this much time alone." She studied him. The cap might as well have disappeared. It was just his face and her face and the cold and the wall. "Jonas," she said at last, "if I ever want you, you will know. There will be no confusion, no half-light. I will say it like I said it in that hall, clear, loud." A small, wry smile touched her lips. "Until then, you may give me your hand and your ears and your warmth. That is more than most have offered me without price." He let out a breath he hadn't noticed he was holding. Some tightness in his chest loosened. "All right," he said. "Then I'll do my best to give those, and to keep my foolishness to myself." She squeezed his hand again. "Your foolishness is safer than their cleverness," she replied. They stood like that, backs to the warm wall, their joined hands the only bridge between them. Eventually, the chill began to creep past even the cookhouse heat, climbing their legs, finding gaps and seams. "You should sleep," she said at last. "Tomorrow the trees will still be there. They do not fall themselves." He glanced up at the low, blank sky. "Sometimes I think they fall just to spite us." "They fall because everything does," she said simply. "Men, trees, empires. The only question is where they land." He smiled faintly. "You're wiser than anyone I've met in this camp. That is not a high mountain to climb," she said dryly. He laughed, quietly, so as not to wake the ghosts of the camp. Reluctantly, he let her hand go. His fingers already missed the weight of it. "Good night, Namusa," he said. "Good night, Jonas," she replied. "Do not dream of the women you cannot remember." "I'll try," he said. "And if you dream of me," she added, "do not tell me. I have enough work without carrying your dreams too." He nodded once, accepting the rule as law. They parted around the corner. She slipped back toward the kitchen door, her figure folding into the shadows, swallowed by the faint orange that spilled when she opened it. He watched until the door closed behind her. Then he trudged toward the BUNKHOUSE inside. The air hit him like a wet blanket, thick with sweat, smoke, and the sour edge of cheap spirits. Men lay in long rows on narrow bunks, boots tucked under their heads or hanging from pegs. A chorus of snores rose and fell like a restless tide. He found his own bunk by habit, shutting his coat, his boots, the outer layer of his shirts. The straw mattress poked through the ticking in places, scratching against his skin as he lay down. He stared at the dark rafters, listening to the building breathe. He thought of her words. 6 months. Not as a boast, not as a complaint, as a measurement of loss and choice and the way a body could feel exiled from itself. He thought of her hand in his, strong and warm and scarred dot around him. Men muttered in their sleep. Someone cursed in a language from the East. Someone else whispered an apology to a woman who was not there. He turned onto his side, facing the wall. He did dream of her. Not in the way she feared. No breathless clutching, no tangled limbs. In the dream she stood in a field that did not exist here, under a sky so wide it made the heart ache. Her hands were empty. Her face was turned toward something he could not see. When he reached out, his hand passed through her like smoke. He woke with the taste of dust on his tongue and the sound of axes being sharpened outside. Morning came gray and thin. The cold seemed sharper after the cramped warmth of the bunkhouse. Jonas pulled on his boots with fingers that felt like someone else's. The ache in his shoulders had settled into its usual dull place. The mess hall hummed by the time he arrived. Men hunched over tin plates, shoveling down porridge and bread like they were racing death. The air was full of clatter and low voices. He moved through the line, took his plate, and stepped toward the counter. She was there. Namisa stood behind the serving pots, ladle in hand, apron already streaked with gray smears. Her hair was wrapped tighter today. Her eyes looked tired, but their focus was sharp as ever. When his turn came, she ladled porridge into his bowl without looking up. "Morning," he said softly. Only then did she lift her eyes. For a heartbeat, they held each other's gaze. Something passed between them, recognition, and the memory of a warm wall in the cold. "Morning," she replied. Her voice carried no extra weight, no softness the others could hear. But he caught the slight easing at the corner of her mouth. Behind him, a man snorted. "Careful, Red," he said. "Watch she don't charge you extra for smiling at you." Another laughed. "She'd crush him flat if she tried to mount him," he drawled crudely. "Man, disappear." Jonas stiffened. Namisa's shoulders squared. Her jaw tightened. She did not look at the men. She dipped the ladle again, filled the next plate. "Move along," she said evenly. "Food gets cold while you waste your jokes on the air." The men behind him chuckled. But there was a nervous edge to it. Jonas stepped aside with his plate, but instead of heading to his usual spot, he turned back toward them. "That's enough," he said. 3 heads swiveled toward him. The tall Finn Kari, Oscar, the one whose hand she had saved, and Lyle, a wiry man with bad teeth and a permanent sneer. "What's that, Red?" Lyle said, "You her protector now?" "I said that's enough," Jonas repeated. His voice was low, but it carried. Kerry raised his hands in mock surrender. "Easy, Swede," he said. "We're just having fun." "Yeah," Oscar added. "No harm meant?" "She's tough. Woman can take a joke." "She shouldn't have to," Jonas said. "Not from you. Not after last night." A murmur ran along the line. Heads turned. Men leaned in, hungry for anything that might break the monotony of porridge and cold. Lyle's eyes narrowed. "You got a lot of opinions for a man who sleeps by himself," he said. "Maybe you're just sore," she said. 6 months and you weren't part of the count." The words hit the air like a thrown punch. Jonas put his plate down carefully on the nearest table. "Say that again?" he said. The room went quiet. Even spoons paused midway to mouths. Namisa still behind the counter, fingers tight on the ladle. "Leave it, Jonas," she said quickly. "Not worth," he shook his head once, still looking at Lyle. "Say it again," he repeated. Lyle snorted. "I said maybe your—" Jonas moved. He didn't lunge, didn't shout. He stepped forward like a man stepping into a river, one foot, then the other. His hand caught the front of Lyle's shirt, bunching the fabric. Not a wild grab. A deliberate grip, knuckles white. Lyle's smirk faltered. "You talk about her like that again," Jonas said quietly, "and I'll show you what 6 months of holding my anger looks like." The words were not loud, but the silence around them made them heavy. Kerry shifted uneasily. "Come on, Red," he said. "No need for this. We're all tired." "Then let your mouths rest," Jonas said, eyes still on Lyle. Lyle tried to wrench his shirt free. Jonas's arm didn't move. He could feel his own heart pounding, the blood hot in his face. Somewhere inside, a voice that sounded like his. Fathers warned him about picking fights with men who would not remember their cruelty tomorrow. He ignored it. "Let him go," the foreman's voice cut through the room like a saw Dot. Every head turned. Harris stood in the doorway, coat unbuttoned, hat in his hand. His hair stuck up in clumps, as if sleep had not surrendered easily. His jaw worked on a piece of tobacco. Jonas released Lyle's shirt. The smaller man stumbled back, catching himself on the man behind him, swearing under his breath. Harris walked forward, boots thudding on the plank floor. "What's this?" he asked. "You girls fighting over porridge?" No one answered. Harris's gaze flicked from Jonas to Lyle to Namusa. He took in the tension, the set of shoulders, the way spoons hovered over plates. Dot, he spat into the corner. "I don't care what she said last night," he said. "Men talk. Women talk. Snow falls. Trees fall. As long as the work gets done and the dishes get washed, what happens in your heads is your own problem." He looked pointedly at Jonas. "You throw a punch in here, though, and it becomes my problem. Which means it becomes yours twice over." Jonas felt their eyes on him. He kept his voice level. "No punch thrown," he said. "Just words I didn't care to hear." Harris grunted. "You think this place runs on respect?" He muttered. "It runs on logs and ledgers. Still?" He glanced at Lyle. "Keep your talk clean enough that I don't have to hear about it. Or I'll clean it for you with my boot." A ripple of half laughter, half relief ran through the men. Harris turned to Namusa. "And you," he said, "tighten your tongue. Men don't like being reminded what they ain't getting. Makes them restless." Namusa's eyes flashed. "Men don't like many things," she said. "Still the world turns." A couple of men sucked in breaths between their teeth, waiting for Harris's reaction. Dot, to their surprise, the foreman's mouth twitched. "Just keep the stew hot," he said. "It's the only thing between them and mutiny." He turned and left, door slamming behind him. The room slowly exhaled. Voices rose again. Spoons resumed their scraping. Jonas picked up his plate. Lyle glared at him, rubbing the wrinkles in his shirt, but said nothing. Carey shook his head, giving Jonas a look that was half warning, half begrudging respect. As Jonas passed the serving counter, Namusa's voice reached him, low and almost without moving her lips. "Thank you," she said. He didn't look at her. "You shouldn't need me to do that," he replied. "Need and deserve are not the same," she said. "Today I am glad you were there." He nodded once, moved to his seat. As he ate, the porridge sat thick in his mouth. The morning had sharpened whatever lay between them. It had also painted a target on his back in the rough language of men who felt their power. Questioned. He knew this was only the beginning. If you enjoyed, please subscribe and comment what country you're watching from. See you in the next one.